So it looks to me like, whereas inductive reasoning just kind of saw a pattern, and came to a conclusion that isn't necessarily right. Deductive reasoning, if done properly, since it uses what? Facts, rules, and definitions, or properties, you're proving something logically. So basically, if you do it properly with deductive reasoning, it's true. It's not the conclusion you come to has to happen. Okay? This is what we'll use to do proofs, which you guys will love when we start doing proofs in section 2.5. Since they are loved so much, we will do a proof. I think that we may start doing it in 2.6. I take that back. But we'll do a proof, then I'm going to have you guys go home and do some proofs, and we'll come back the next day and we'll work the proof. Everyone will work a proof on the board with a partner or two. They are tough, so we take a little time to go a little slower with this. Okay? There will be assignments. There will be the proof assignments, which you will get a grade for the next day. I'll have everybody come up here at the first of the hour, and I'll check whether you get your 5 points for you tried it. My main thing with proofs is you got to try. Okay? Because everybody's going to be a little confused at first. It's okay for your proof to be wrong. Okay? Anyhow, law of detachment. This is really very, very simple concept that sometimes is taken too far. Or that's just made more complicated than what it has to be. That's the right way to say it. If P, then Q is true. Then if P is true, then logically Q has to be true. Now, in the example I had you guys write down, the law that I made you guys write down, what was their example? So we don't need writing it twice. Anybody?
Oh, I just wrote down that.
I asked you to write word for word what was in the box, didn't I?
If P then Q is true, is it
So
your
obviously you guys don't follow directions very well, do you?
That's what I mean. I wrote that.
Good. Given. What does it say?
If P,
then
Q is true statement.
P is true, then Q is
But I asked you to write what's in this box, so you should have written this example down as well. So hopefully you did. If you didn't, get it done. If a car is, the given is, and when they say given is a way of saying this is accepted to be true. So you can write it down as true. If the car is out of gas, then it will not start. Okay, the law of detachment tells me that if the first part happens, then what?
The second part.
The second part has to happen. So in an individual example, Sarah's car is out of gas. The law of detachment tells me that what? The only thing that changes is it's a specific example, so Sarah's car won't start. But the law of detachment says if the hypothesis happens, then that has to happen. If the whole statement is true. And you say, well, why is that true? Because it says given. That's me assuming that that's true. That's what given means. We say this is the given. The given is accepted to be true. Wake up. It is a valid conclusion to come to this. Okay, that's what the law of detachment is. It's a fancy way of saying if the whole statement is true, then if the first part happens, the second part what? Has to happen. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? You guys see what I'm saying? Okay. The law of the word that I've never been able to pronounce right in all my years of teaching. Syllogism. Syllogism. Write that down now. It's the transitive property of if-then statements. Doesn't a transitive property say if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A has to be equal to C? This law is the same as the law of detachment, except instead of having one if-then statement, it involves what? Two of them that are linked by the conclusion of one is the what? Hypothesis of the other. They do a great job here of using colors. Things I like about this book, there's things I don't. This is one thing I do like. The colors kind of lead you to what stays the same, doesn't it, in the two statements? What's the blue in your statement?
Hypothesis. I mean conclusion.
Of one and the what?
Hypothesis of the other.
It's the what?
Q.
It's the Q. The red is the what?
P.
The green is the what?
R.
See what I mean? And when you think of it this simply, basically, if both these are accepted to be true, then you can make the logical conclusion that if you get a job, what? You will buy a car. I mean, isn't that the logical conclusion you guys would come to if you read these in order?
Yeah. I think that seems.
It's
super-
just we've given it a name. One time I had the I'm going to do it right now on how you pronounce syllogism. I'm pretty. Phone doesn't work as fast as it used to. Anyhow. Syllogism. That's how you say it. Syllogism. Law of syllogism. Okay? Now, what you're going to find, everybody get your little red books out. Let's do some examples. This is kind of the calm before the storm. You get a really easy section right before we get into proofs.
Great.
Because everybody loves proofs. Determine whether the stated conclusion is valid or the given based on the given information. Guys, you guys got to think of this. Really got to think about this. And here's what you've got to say to yourselves. First, everybody listen. Just because it makes sense to you does not mean it follows either one of these laws. Or just because it's true does not mean it follows one of these laws. You understand what I'm saying? It has to follow that step-by-step process. Now, if a number is divisible by 6, there's my hypothesis. Then the number is divisible by 3. $18 is divisible by 6. Conclusion, 18 is divisible by 3.
Valid, yes.
I would agree. Why? Because if P, then Q, right? Did P happen first? Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
What was my conclusion? Was it Q, just in a specific example? So it's valid. Why? Law of what? Detachment. The law of detachment uses one if and then statement. That's the way you can tell them apart. Law of syllogism has 2 of them in it, right? Let's look at number 2. If a pet is a rabbit, then it eats carrots. Jenny's pet eats carrots. So P, then what? Q, and then what is this? Is this P or Q happening?
R.
No. What is
Q.
happening?
Q.
Jenny's pet eats carrots. Is that P or Q?
Q.
That's Q. That's Q being true. Does that necessarily lead you to P? No, the next thing that has to happen is that you get what? P being true. Invalid. Because what did they give me? What happened? The Q happened to be true, right? The Q doesn't always lead you to what? The P. The only thing that leads you to the conclusion is the what? Hypothesis. So they gave you the hypothesis, the conclusion, said this is true, and then gave you the conclusion. That doesn't necessarily lead you back to the hypothesis, does it? The only thing the law of detachment says is that if the hypothesis happens, then the what? Conclusion has to happen. It doesn't say you can go backwards. You guys see what I'm saying? No?
Still trying to get.
Law of detachment says if P, then what?
Q.
If P is true, then what?
Q is true.
Everyone agree with that?
Yes.
That's the law of detachment. In this case, we had if P, then Q, right?
Yes.
And then we have Q end up being true, right? Why does that mean then that P's true? This is the what? If, then.
So if nothing.
You can't have the then happen and prove the what? If. It's going in the wrong order. If they had said here, Jenny's pet is a rabbit, a valid conclusion would have been
The rabbit
Jenny's
eats carrots.
pet eats carrots. Do you see what I'm saying? They can't give the second part to infer the first part. Okay? It has to go in the order of P, then Q, then P has to be what? True, then Q is what?
True.
Think of it like that if you want to make it like a flow chart. Okay? Law of detachment. First, P, then Q, all has to be what?
True.
Everybody understand? Next thing that can happen, second thing, P is what? True. Then, as a result, third, Q is what? True. That's the order it has to be in. The one we just did, the reason it didn't work is it went P, Q, and then what?
Q.
Q. Then what? P. That what? Doesn't work. It has to go in this order. You guys see what I'm saying now?
Yeah.
It's complicated, but it's also really easy. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain. The one that we had P, then Q happened. That ended up being true. Then they said, hey, Q's true. And then they said P must be true then. That is wrong because it went in the wrong order, right? That's why that is what? Invalid. Okay? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, it's easy, but it's not. Once you get it, it's like, oh yeah, that's super easy. But before you do, it can be kind of hard. So let's look here. Okay, so we've got if P, then what? Q. What happens next?
P is true.
P happens, right? So we're going right so far. Is what they say here Q?
Yes.
So this is what?
Valid.
Of the law of what? Detachment. Because, and did you notice? I didn't even read it. But do I really have to? As long as I read it in my mind and identify what's P, what's Q. Then P happens to be true, I can then validly say that Q has to then happen, right? And is that what they wrote down here?
Yes. Won't P and Q always be the same, and then the second P and Q be mixed?
It basically went like this. It has to be in what? That order, doesn't it? P then Q, then P true, then Q true. Can't go in any other order. And look, P, then Q, then P true, then what?
Q true.
That's valid. Make sense?
Yep.
Let's go to the other side. This is syllogism, law of syllogism, which is going to use the law to draw a conclusion from each set of statements. If possible, if no valid conclusion, possible, right, no valid conclusion. Okay. Remember, as far as flow chart's concerned, with this other law, okay? First of all, P then Q is true, right? At the same time, then, what else becomes true? Q, then what? R. Then, what? P is true. Then what? R is what?
True.
Therefore, P to R is what?
True.
True. You can say that statement. I like to say this is cutting out the middleman. Because here's what it looks like. Right? Everybody look at this picture up here. P then Q, Q then R. What are we doing? Cutting out the middleman. Right? But it has to happen, as far as flow chart's concerned, it has to happen in that flow. Okay? So let's look at 2.4, or page 22 here. If a dog eats super dog food, he will be happy. Yeah, if P, that's Q. Rover is happy.
That's R.
Is there a way to use this law to make anything happen? No. This is a law of detachment, or this isn't anything. Once again, this is P, then Q, and then we found Q to be what?
True.
True. Can't go in that order, can we? P has to be next for the law of detachment, so no valid what? Conclusion. Watch this, if an angle is supplementary to an obtuse angle, then it is acute. If an angle is acute, then the measure is less than 90. What's our conclusion here? Do we have P, Q, then Q again, then R?
Yeah.
Do we? So all you do is cut out what? The middleman in your statement is this. If an angle is supplementary to an obtuse angle,
Then its measure is less than 90.
then its measure is less than 90 degrees. When they're written down like that, it's super easy. You just cross out the two middle, don't you? From the first to the last. There's your answer right there. When we write it down, I will. If an angle is, I'm going to use SPP in the period, to an obtuse angle, then its measure is less than 90 degrees. That makes sense? Go on to the next one. If a measure of an angle A is less than 90 degrees, then A is acute. If A is acute, then angle A is congruent to angle B. What do you think? Don't try to figure out whether it's true or not. We have if P, then what? Q. Do we repeat Q again as the hypothesis for the next statement?
Yes.
And then do we go to R?
Yes.
So what can we cut out?
Q.
Middleman, we can cut out Q. What is our statement? What would we then infer? If the measure of angle A is less than 90,
then angle A
is angle A is congruent to angle B? How easy is that?
pretty easy now.
Let's go down to this one.
Well, that's the answer right there.
That's the answer. If an angle is a right angle, then the measure of the angle is 90 degrees. If two lines are perpendicular, then they form a right angle. Here's P, here's Q. Is that Q said over again?
No.
No.
We'll call it R and then T.
So there's no valid.
So there's there a valid conclusion?
No.
You've got a basic template to go by. Yes, ma'am.
What's T?
Oh, I was just picking another letter. If you study for a test, then you will receive a high grade. Your grade on the test is high.
P, Q.
This is P, Q, then what?
P.
Q, right?
Not
Does that work?
No.
No.
No. To use the law of attachment, what has to be next?
P.
P. Okay?